Evening and welcome to episode 94 of the Jacksonian. We are back after 2025. This is the first episode of 2026, and we're starting it very nicely with Alex Donno, who's here for the third time, all right here on the show. And you know him from Locked On ACC and Locked On Canes as we go over whether the U Part 3 has already started, the Miami Hurricanes for 2025, the playoff run, and much, much more. And let me tell you something, you're going to be in for a wild ride. How you did today, good buddy?
I'm happy to be back, and it's been a wild ride. And now we have win or lose, one more college football game to go before a very long off season. So I'm hoping this is a great game coming up.
Oh, it will be, man. It's going to be a fun one. And, for those who haven't really tuned in to what you got and the magic you bring, should I tell the audience a bit about yourself for those that hadn't seen the previous two episodes of your appearances on here?
Well, thank you. I host the Locked On Canes and Locked On ACC podcasts, like you mentioned. Obviously, I'm here decked out in Miami gear, some Miami stuff in my background. I was born and raised in South Florida, lifelong Miami Hurricanes football fan. My parents both worked at the university when I was growing up. I attended the university, so for my whole life, it's been all about the U, and it's always great being able to cover the football programs and basketball programs, and also went to a lot of baseball games throughout the year. So it's passionate, and to see Miami, I had the luxury of growing up in the 80s and 90s, and then 80s, 90s, early 2000s, like every other year they were playing in a national championship game. But now it's been over 20 years. So for Miami to be able to get back to this point, it really is magical, and it's a really tough matchup, as everybody knows, but I don't think Miami would have it any other way. Mario Cristobal has loved being able to play up the whole underdog mentality, and Miami comes into this one against the Hoosiers as an 8.5-point underdog, and I think Miami relishes that role, Jackson.
They do at that. They do at that. And, just kind of like going over the 2025 season, including last week's semifinal victory over Ole Miss. That was a fantastic finish by the Canes. Like, did kind of like, what were you thinking, like during that run? Like, and I know like Miami was thinking themselves, there's some people doubting whether we should be in or not. So you know what? We're gonna surprise some people. It's something I've said on this show and throughout like multiple shows as a whole is that Miami always strives under the spotlight with Mario Cristobal. That's been like my thing that I've always said. But how are you feeling?
Yeah, like you said, a lot of the times when Miami has struggled and Mario Cristobal has struggled over the years, it's been in the not big games, right? It's been when you go up against the SMUs and the Louisvilles of the world as a favorite. When you have games like Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl, Ole Miss in the Fiesta Bowl, not to mention starting this playoff run with a victory at one of the toughest places to play in the country at Texas A&M. These are the games that Miami tends to show up in when the lights are brightest. And going back to the Ole Miss game, the victory in the Fiesta Bowl, gosh, the fourth quarter had 4 lead changes, which I think is a college football playoff record, or at least tied a record. So it was back and forth. It was panic-inducing, I think, for Miami fans and Ole Miss fans, and just very enjoyable for people who were neutral observers. And Miami got the opportunity, late in the fourth quarter to put together a game-winning drive. They were down 3 points when Carson Beck got the football, and obviously my thought was, please score, but my other thought was, please don't go to overtime, because overtimes in the Fiesta Bowl reminds you of that fateful matchup with Ohio State back in January of 2003. I did not want to leave
And
it up to
called by Keith
overtime.
Jackson.
Yeah, for sure. And so, with that final drive that Miami put together, it was I thought it was great for Carson Beck first and foremost. He's had a lot of doubters, during his time at Miami, a lot of people who, I listened to what a lot of people say about Miami, and one thing that I heard come up quite a bit, Jackson, was people before the game saying, hey, well, if you put the ball in Carson Beck's hands with 2 minutes needing a game-winning drive, that guy is probably going to fail. He's not capable of doing that. Miami went 15 plays and 15 plays and 75 yards. They converted four third downs. I'm getting a little ahead of myself on that one. They converted 4 third downs en route to a game-winning touchdown run by Beck from 3 yards out. So I thought that was a legacy-defining final drive for Carson Beck, and it's great. I mean, obviously Miami wants to win this game. But win or lose, I think he's already stamped his legacy in his 1 year at Miami, and he's already, shown fans he's, one of the more successful quarterbacks to ever put the U on his helmet. Now he's got to win one more, and he goes truly into the history books for it.
And regardless of whether you see Miami win at all or they lose the Natty, was this done for the ACC exactly for them? Because I feel like it's done a great load for them.
Yeah, it has been it's been a lifesaver for the ACC. Because first of all, the ACC gets to brag about their 9-4 postseason record, right? 3 of those wins were by Miami. The ACC gets to boast an 8-6 record head-to-head against the SEC this year. 3 of those were by Miami. Miami has beaten Florida in the regular season, Ole Miss and Texas A&M in the playoff, and I think it's been a good advertisement for the ACC, and Miami, for what it's worth, was not one of the teams that sued the ACC a couple of years ago, and despite the fact that Miami didn't sue them, Miami actually gets to reap the benefits of that lawsuit because of the lawsuit that Clemson and Florida State, separate lawsuits that they had filed against the ACC. Part of the settlement was ACC teams that make a playoff run, they get to keep their entire share of the playoff revenue. They don't have to share it with the other members of the conference. So Miami's the one reaping the benefits of that right now. Obviously, every team in the ACC has the opportunity to do that, but it's been big. The ACC has not had a team play in the national title game, I think, in 6 years or whenever the last time Clemson did it was.
And so, that 2019 season, of course.
Right, yeah, so 6 years.
Months after we saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood with Margot Robbie sitting and chilling
Good
in the movie theater.
Yeah. I like that film a lot. I'd like a Miami championship even more if they can get it.
There you go, man. I know the ACC is playing the circle game quite a lot, man. They are playing that. They are happy.
Yeah.
Oh, man. They're playing the Peanut song to it. That's for sure. And I'm joking, but I'm also kind of serious when I ask this question. But has the U Part 3 already started with this season? Did it start when Miami was ruled in for the playoffs?
Yeah, I know the director of the U films, the documentaries, Billy Corbin, who was a Miami alumnus from I think it was probably the early 90s when he graduated. He was there a little before my time, but I've gotten to know Billy over the years, and there's nothing he likes more than telling a great story. And I would imagine he's already probably obtaining some footage from the season. And I would think that, this year, or maybe, the last couple of years now, as Billy's probably formulating what the U Part 3 would look like in his mind, I think he's starting to put the pieces together. Now, I think, honestly, as much as I'd love under any circumstances to see the U Part 3, I think the only way that becomes a true viable documentary is if Miami gets another championship. And maybe it's Monday night, or Jackson, maybe this is like an early chapter of a longer story to be told. Perhaps, if Miami doesn't win on Monday night, maybe they get back into the championship game within the next year or two, and eventually you'll get the ending to that U Part 3. But I would imagine that Billy is probably going to want to tell that story if and when Miami wins their next national championship. I think he's going to start to get that documentary lined up.
Well, I know this. It looks to me they're going to be running the show on the ACC. Because it's Clemson is a complete disaster. I mean, the Dabo Swinney era of 2021 to now feels like Bobby Bowden at Florida State from '01 to '09. Florida
Yeah.
State, I mean, plays up to Alabama, but that's it, really. So they kind of let one game go to their head. That's it. We don't really know what version we're seeing in 2026. Duke had a lot of luck. Can they continue it? That's going to be the question. Is Virginia becoming the Indiana of the ACC? That's going to be a question there with Tony Elliott. Or are they more like the Vanderbilt of the ACC? Yeah. But also, Virginia Tech, my God, they're going to be wild with James Franklin.
That's one Virginia Tech, I think, can get competitive in the ACC pretty quickly. Nowadays, I mean, you look at not saying Virginia Tech is going to become Indiana, but I think you look at Indiana as the example. 2 years ago, they were still Indiana football, and then within 2 years, Kurt Signetti, with his incredible coaching and his incredible transfer portal recruiting, has been able to turn over that roster and turn it into a well-oiled machine. And like again, like I don't know if James Franklin will be able to duplicate what Kurt Signetti did, but I see Virginia Tech bringing in a ton of transfers, and they were able to convert so many of his Penn State commits into flips to Virginia Tech that it seems as though they're going to be fortifying things really, really quickly. In terms of what the ACC is going to look like the next couple of years, I don't think there's going to be any doubt. Miami's going to be the most talented team in the conference for a couple of seasons. I guess right now, like the big question for the short term would be who's going to be Miami's quarterback. They have swung and missed on their biggest transfer portal targets. So, they have internal options. Obviously, nobody who's excited them so much that they didn't try to get Ty Simpson and Sam Levitt, because they did that and they swung and missed on those guys. But whether it's if it's an open competition between guys who are already in Miami's quarterback room, like Luke Nickel, Emory Williams, Judd Anderson, and Darion Coleman, who's coming in as a true freshman, maybe somebody inexperienced starts next year. But I think Miami's floor is so high in terms of the line of scrimmage talent that they can win a lot of games even with an inexperienced quarterback. Like I'm with you. I'm with you on Clemson. They've been on a downward. I still think they're going to have enough talent to maybe be competitive next year in the ACC, but like you definitely don't pencil them into the ACC championship game. Florida State is kind of in crisis right now. Everybody knows they have a lame duck coach with Mike Norvell. I think players are hesitant to kind of invest their future in that situation right now. I don't know if what Virginia did this year has a whole lot of staying power. I think in the cases of Duke and SMU, I think getting their quarterbacks back for next year. Kevin Jennings is going to be back with the Mustangs, and Darian Mensah is going to be back with Duke. I would expect those teams to be able to compete, and I never rule out Louisville. I know that like the last couple of years, they've found a way to kind of trip over their own feet when they've won some huge games and they've had some really tough losses, but that's a team that's been right there. And then 2-3 years ago, they played for an ACC championship game with Jeff Brom. So I wouldn't rule out Louisville as well. I think the ACC it's a good conference. I just think it's like unclear outside of Miami who kind of the next best team is.
Yeah, and Georgia Tech's definitely another team to look out for. I mean, they've been like really rolling in the portal.
I forgot about them. Yeah, I forgot to mention them. I think it might be tough for them. Losing Buster Faulkner, their offensive coordinator, to Florida, losing Aaron Philo, the heir apparent at quarterback, and a lot of their other offensive players. Everybody seemed to gravitate towards Florida and some other spots in the portal. I'd love to see them prove me wrong. I think Georgia Tech might take a step back next year, but I'd be happy to be wrong about that.
Well, Wake Forest, I'm curious about what they're going to be looking like. But we
Yeah.
know North Carolina State, they're just a typical 7-win team. They're not
Yeah.
going to do anything more or less. North Carolina, who knows with them? I mean, I'm sure we're gonna see like some interview on the Today Show or something like that, like we did like with 60 Minutes of Bill Belichick. It was like the most talked about event for like a week or so because it was like, oh, Bill Belichick's girlfriend, and it's like you're adding a lot of gasoline to the fire when having Bobby Petrino as your offensive coordinator. Oh, it's his redemption story. It's his redemption story. Yeah, where did I see that before?
We've seen that one about 1,000 times. Yeah, I mean, I'm with you on NC State. You know, it's big for them that it looks like CJ Bailey is remaining with them, but they've lost a lot of other weapons, including Hollywood Smothers, their top running back who went to Alabama. You know, they're
Texas.
losing their top tight end Justin Jolie to the NFL, so it's like. I don't know. I mean, CJ Bailey's a really good quarterback, but it seems like they've lost more weapons than they're adding, unfortunately. North Carolina, I don't know what to think. I mean, they'll probably be a little bit better than they were this year, but I don't think they're going to be better enough to contend. And then like Wake Forest, it's a great point. Like it's a team that flew under the radar, but they were a tough out for everybody this year, and they had one of their best seasons ever. It's like I kind of feel like, and then Cal and Stanford, I'm not so sure about. Although they both seem to be really investing, and Cal is getting JKS back at quarterback. Stanford suddenly is getting crazy donations for their football program, so maybe they both get a little bit better. Like I don't know, I feel like the only teams that I definitely think are going to be bad next year are Syracuse and Boston College. I think outside of those two, everybody has a chance to be average or better.
Oh yeah, that's for sure, man. But yeah, I'm curious to see what'll happen for 2026 and beyond, and I'm just excited to see when that 2026 ACC football schedule comes out. Because
Yeah.
it's coming in the next couple weeks. I know, but it's definitely on a Wednesday night, so I'll be
Yep.
plopping down watching like a hawk. So there you go. Oh man, so that's gonna be fun. But yeah, Smothers, he was gonna go to Bama, but Texas was able to talk him
Oh,
in.
I forgot about that. Yeah, that's right. And Texas, man, Texas is snatching up everybody. Texas and Oregon.
Yeah, yeah, Ed and Tess saying it was just snatching yeah, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sure recruits want to hear about how great things were in 1939, the last time you won it all.
It was like yesterday, right?
Yep. But I will say though, we now get to the national title. You're looking at the game. Miami, Indiana. It's third time ever they've played one another. Last time was in 1966, which I believe Miami won that one. The first time was in 1964. Like I'm not kidding. Like good grief, it's been a minute since these two
Yeah.
have played one another. Like wow, like only three. This be the third time. Third time ever these two schools are playing one another in college football.
I think that's
1966?
exciting. I mean, we had against Ole Miss, it was the first time since the 50s.
1951, where
Yeah.
yep, where it was the first year of I Love Lucy on
That's
CBS.
right. So yeah, so I mean, twice in a row, Miami gets matchups against teams they haven't faced since different eras of football. I don't know. I don't know how valuable the 1966 game film is going to be to this matchup, or 1964 for that matter. And it's it's going to be an electric matchup. I mean, I don't have to tell any of your viewers how good Indiana has been this year. Miami's been on a great run, and then you have the extra storyline of Fernando Mendoza being a Miami kid. Played at Miami Columbus High School, which is the same high school that Mario Cristobal went to. Cristobal was a classmate and a teammate of Mendoza's father when he was in high school. Mendoza, I'm sure he's going to be bringing a chip on his shoulder because when he was coming out of Miami Columbus High, he wasn't much of a football prospect, and Miami didn't offer him a scholarship then. That was the Manny Diaz era, not the Cristobal era. But I don't know if it would have made a difference. I don't know if Cristobal would have offered him a scholarship. He was almost going to go to Yale. And then he was offered by Cal and decided, which is also a great academic institution with a decent football program. So he ends up going to Cal and working his way to Indiana. So I'm sure for him to come home to play against a team that he rooted for growing up that didn't really give him the time of day coming out of high school, I'm sure he'll be extra motivated.
There you go, man. It's gonna be a fun one, seeing what happens, and of course, like when Miami, Indiana play one another last time in 1966, that was the let me see. So that was in the third full year of Lyndon B. Johnson as U.S. president, of course, and that
Of
was
course. Yeah.
and that was the first year where everything on TV was in living color. So that was the
Uh,
first year that Gunsmoke was on color TVs. So that was pretty cool. And that same day, on October 21st of 1966, Alabama won 11-10 against Tennessee because of 11 unanswered points in the fourth quarter, led by Kenny Snake Stabler in
dang.
that game. Yep, and it was a rainy day.
Wow. I Good trivia. You're always great with the trivia, man. I always appreciate it.
Oh, thanks, man. But we get to the predictions for the national title, and Alex, we'll start with you, my guy.
Yeah, so I'm gonna lean surprisingly enough to Miami winning a close game, and I'll tell you what it's gonna take for Miami to get there. Being able to affect Fernando Mendoza with your pass rush is non-negotiable, and the reason why I think Miami is capable of doing that. And I know Mendoza won a Heisman Trophy. He's had a phenomenal season, but he holds on to the football for about 3.2 seconds on average, which is, you're either going to have to make an adjustment or you're going to have to hope your offensive line plays the game of their lives. Because when you expect to hold on to the football for more than 3 seconds against Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor, that spells trouble. I don't think there's any offensive line that's had an answer. Like the teams that have done well against Miami offensively, it's been because their quarterbacks have gotten rid of the football in under 2.5 seconds, right? I mean, Miami affected Trinidad Chambliss. They only sacked him once, but they did affect him, and he averages about 2.48 seconds to throw. Mendoza holds the football for a long time, so it's something to watch, right? Again, Cignetti and company may have an answer for it schematically, but it's something to watch. And then offensively for Miami, they're going to have to run the football, and yards have been very difficult on the ground to come by against Indiana. Miami needs to commit to the running game. Do not abandon it. Ironically enough, a team that did pretty well with their running game against Indiana was Penn State, who almost pulled off a massive upset against the Hoosiers. They ran for 117 yards. I think Miami, with their offensive line, if they commit to the running game, is going to be able to run for 100-plus yards, which would, accomplish some goals when it comes to eating up time of possession and keeping some pressure off of Carson Beck. So I think the matchup between Miami's offensive line and Indiana's defensive line is going to be a great matchup. As effective as Indiana's D-line has been, their average weight is 278 pounds. Miami's average offensive line weight is 331 pounds. So you know what Miami's going to try to do. They're going to try to lean into the Hoosiers and make the game physical. And, I think Miami's going to need at least one key takeaway in this game, whether it be a field flipping, interception, big fumble recovery, big special teams return. Because one thing, the Hoosiers, and I'm giving them all due respect. Like, I'm not saying Miami's going to win by a blowout or anything like that, because the Hoosiers don't tend to beat themselves. One of the reasons why they're in this position is just how smoothly they operate. That's what happens when you're really well coached and when you have a team full of 23-year-olds. They are a well-oiled machine when it comes to the way that they execute. So in Miami needing to disrupt Mendoza, I believe they're going to need a key takeaway in this game. And if Miami, you know, I'll steal a phrase from Josh Pate, if Miami plays at their best, I think their best is good enough to beat Indiana. So I'm going to go Miami. I'm going to say 23-20. I'm going to say a really close, relatively low scoring game.
Well, I think, you know, when I see a head coach with a resting bitch face after a 60-point win, I'm thinking to myself, that guy's going to lead his team to a national title.
You might be right about that.
And honestly, you know, the way Indiana's played throughout this season, I mean, the way they smacked the Crimson Tide, and I talked about this with Rocket Rant and you know, Alec Keyser when I was on the CFB Express channel. I believed the winner of the Rose Bowl would go on to win a national title. That's what I felt then, and I feel that way now. Indiana won the Rose Bowl. I feel like they can win it all. I've got Indiana winning 38-17 against Miami. And, you know, it's I just feel like Miami is going to get smacked by that Indiana team. Indiana's not messing around. That's what
they've been doing to everybody. I feel like this one's going to be different, but that's what Indiana's been doing to everybody to this point.
I feel like I'm looking at, like, I'm comparing them to 2001 Miami, 2019 LSU, 04 USC, 1971 Nebraska. That's what I feel like this 2025 Indiana team is like. Well, for those who want to learn about the magic you're cooking up on what you got going on Locked On Canes and Locked On ACC, where can people find you, Alex?
Thank you so much, Jackson. It's always a pleasure being on with you. You can find me at Alex Donno on X, or you can find my show. Just search Locked On Canes on every podcast platform, Locked On Canes on YouTube, or Locked On ACC, which I co-host with Kenton Gibbs, who's awesome. Locked On ACC on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. And you can imagine we've been talking a lot about this game. We've been talking about the transfer portal, everything going on in college sports, and it's going to continue to be fun here for the next several days.
Agree. Tell your friends, your family, and the cashiers at Publix about the match that Alex brings, all right there on Locked On Canes and Locked On ACC, and much, much more. And you can check me out all right here on Jackson Johnson 979, where I'm 268 subs away from that magic number, 1,000 subs. And you can check me, Trevion, Jeffrey, and myself on Alabama with the Voice of College Football Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays on Alabama with the Voice of College Football. You can also check me out on SEC at the Voice of College Football, where I star with Andrew Miller, Josh Mahler, Tucker Harlan, including tonight at 7 p.m. Central Time, all right there on the next live edition of SEC Live. And for more updates, what I've got going on the Jacksonian, Alabama with the Voice of College Football, SEC at the Voice of College Football. Check me out, Jackson VOCFB on X/Twitter and on Instagram and Threads, Jackson Johnson 543-908. And with that being said, like, comment, subscribe, click on the notification bell so you never miss another video or another episode whatsoever. And we'll be seeing you soon. Good night, everybody.